I'm here with Katie Tripp at Save the Manatee Club. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Roger.
So I wonder if we could start by you just kind of refreshing my memory on how you got started having any kind of thing to do with manatees in the first place.
When I was 11, I remember watching a PBS special about manatees. I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania, and this special was all about manatees and the threats they face. It talked about boats and habitat destruction. And I had fallen in love with the ocean when I was about 3, but that was really my first, introduction to the manatees. And I just remember sitting there thinking, someone should really do something about that. And I don't know, of all the species that I knew about, I was into whales and dolphins, and there was just something about the manatee story that just really stuck with me. And so that summer, my mom was a school teacher, so she had the summer off, and we made our first expedition in the RV to Florida to go in search of the manatees. And it just sort of snowballed from there. We went to Blue Spring for the first time, and I found a Save the Manatee Club brochure. So when we got home from that trip, I adopted my first manatee, and someone directed us over towards Homosassa Springs, the wildlife park, and fell in love with that place and inquired about volunteering, and ended up going back the next summer and the summer after that to become their youngest volunteer. And it was someone there who told me about Eckerd College, and when it came time to apply to college, that's the only school I applied to, and I went there in the marine science program and started volunteering. I did manatee watch every Saturday morning, bright and early, at the park right next to campus. And at the time, John Reynolds was still a professor at Eckerd, but he was kind of transitioning out, so he wasn't on campus a whole lot. But I had a freshman year advisor who ran across him in a faculty meeting and said, you're going to run across this girl, and I want you to pay attention. And he told me that later on, and so it was through Dr. Reynolds that I got introduced to the Path Lab for Fish and Wildlife, and that led to UF, and you at UF, and the board position here led me to Save the Manatee Club.
Right,
So,
I think you were our first student member
board
of the Save the Manatee Club Board of Directors. Yeah. That's right. For some time now, for several years, since you got your PhD at UF, you've been the staff biologist at Save the Manatee Club. Is that right?
The Director of Science and Conservation. Okay. It'll be 5 years in May.
Wow.
I know.
5 years. That's hard to believe.
I agree.
So give the audience a feeling for what does it mean on a day-to-day basis to be doing that job? What sort of things do you deal with?
I tell people I do everything from developing policy to changing the water cooler. You definitely, when you work at a nonprofit, you wear a lot of hats. So, we do things from cultivating new education and outreach ideas, developing new materials, even things like I'm trying to come up with some fun new t-shirt ideas. We're always trying to market ourselves, and being a woman, I find our t-shirts sort of undesirable and mannish, and so I want to design some new t-shirts. So there's an opportunity for things like that, and I don't do that too much. But on the more serious side of things, we're reviewing local government, state, and federal policies, looking at new laws that are being passed. We've got the legislative session coming up, so we monitor all of those bills. There are always new rules coming out of the state governments, and citizens will call us with local government issues, that this is happening, or there's a marina being built, or they're putting in a new ridge span and I'm worried about the manatees. So everything having to do from individual manatee protection efforts all the way up to springs protection, water supply, water quality, seagrass, all of those things. And then of course we also try to help our partners working in other countries, developing conservation plans or funding. Maybe they have all the ideas, they just need a little money to get going, and so we try to provide some of that sort of seed funding. So it's incredibly varied. I don't know of any other job where you just do quite such a multitude of things.
Well, now you mentioned manatees in other countries. Tell us a little bit more detail about those efforts and how the club and yourself fits into international protection.
Sure. Well, there are amazing people everywhere that manatees and dugongs exist that are doing all kinds of wonderful work, absolutely. And it's something I've always been interested in, and the club has a history of, assisting in different things, whether it be, lending a little bit of funding or, but I do feel, and I might be a little biased just because I'm here doing it, that we have ramped up those efforts in the last few years. I think that we're doing more, and it ranges from sometimes folks just want some outreach materials, and so we can send them some bookmarks, and they've got the whole, they've got everything they need. They just want a little something to give out. Other countries, they need help developing a conservation plan. So last year I went to Costa Rica, and I with the biologist down there who kind of heads the manatee conservation efforts. We went from the north end of the country to the south end of the country, met with all of the the key leaders in those different areas and talked about the different conservation issues, what could be done. We visited the different habitats, and at the end of the day we sat down and we came up with a plan of attack, just short, medium, and long-term goals, and what should be done. So that's one of the more in-depth levels of involvement we've had, and I enjoy that. Other countries, they have what they need, they have their programs in place, but one country that we've done a lot in is Belize. There's a wildlife rehab center there, and it's the only place for injured manatees in the whole country. And to say they work on a shoestring would just be such an understatement. And so, Belize is developing, there's more boat traffic, they're seeing more watercraft related deaths, and they need more infrastructure to be able to care for those animals. And so we've been able to help them fund a large new tank, a lift system, and also to, just help feed, when they do get orphan manatees that come in that need formula and things, we're able to, use our membership, send out a message, say we need this, send them links to, online where they can buy a bag of formula, send it to us, and then we get it down there. So really we do whatever people need, either, if it's writing a check or, translating something. We're starting to do more with Cuba. They're excited about education outreach, and, so I sat down with one of the key biologists down there, and she said, I really need to reach the kids. What can we do? And I said, well, these are the things we have in English. Tell me what you want it to say in Spanish, and we'll do it. We'll change it. And so it's lots of different opportunities. Every country's different, and in the same way they're all the same. A lot of the core issues are very similar. It's just sort of, are they at the very beginning of a problem, or are they deeply, in the middle of a crisis?
If you could tell us how the work you do, let's say the Manatee Club, incorporates your own personal values about living on this earth.
I think it's 100% overlap between the job and the values. It was very important to me to go someplace where I felt like I could have an informed opinion and use that to make a difference. And I think no matter what job you have or kind of what side of the fence you're sitting on, you always wonder, could I be more effective at an agency? Should I have gone to work for the state government or the federal government? But then at least I feel like I see that you're very hamstrung in that sort of environment. There's other people, unless you're the grand poobah in charge of everything, there's other people kind of telling you what you should and shouldn't say, and I don't have that here. I mean, I look at the issues and I formulate a logical response to them, and I can get up at a meeting and say, I think this is a bad idea, and this is what I think you should do instead. And it doesn't mean people always listen, which is when then I circle back to say, well, maybe I should just work in an agency. But I do think that at least it's a little more liberating to be able to, write the op-ed or give the public comment, or, write the letter that says, I don't think you should be doing this. Let's think about something else. And so in that sense, and of course, I mean, my values going back to, being a very young child, and the way that I was raised was to kind of tread lightly on the earth, and to care about animals, and to care about the environment, and those values have only deepened in time.
Mm.
So this job is very, it's very in line with all of that.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you were a graduate student, you got a PhD in involving research,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe could you spend a minute and talk about how science fits into what you do?
Sure. For me, when I did my undergrad, I went to do marine science, and I went through, all the botany and the marine invert and all the different chemistries, and that was fine, and I knew it was important, but there was something missing. And so really it was just about my first year at Eckerd in '99, they were starting a environmental policy program. And once I was able to marry the two and go through the policy courses and have the science, for me, I really felt like I was onto something. And when I went to graduate school, I think just as an undergrad, I just was seeing enough of the real world and how people were treated to feel like when you're a scientist, people listen to you. Like somehow being a scientist gives you some extra credibility, or people respect you more. And so I felt that when I did go on to graduate school, it needed to be, in the sciences.
I see.
But, for me, I guess more of my heart was really with the policy and the management. How do you take that science to, affect positive change?
Mm-hmm.
So I went into a program that was much more research-based, but I kind of fed my soul during that time by taking on some side projects. Like I worked as a consultant for the South Florida Water Management District on one of their Everglades restoration projects, making sure that manatee habitat was protected. I got involved with the Save the Manatee Club board, so I was able to do those other things. And I also did a certificate program that the College of Engineering offered in water resources policy and management. So again, I was kind of able to do all those things, which for me it was both, how could you be a scientist and not care about how your science is affecting policy, and how can you talk about setting policy when you don't understand the science?
Mm-hmm.
So for me it was, it wasn't one or the other, it had to be both. So in this job, my goodness, everything from understanding hydrology, geology, minimum flows and levels, manatee biology, why a manatee should be released here or there, understanding their behavior, understanding how different, assays work to understand, are manatees still threatened by papillomavirus? So when a new paper comes out, you can try to digest it. So really, it's in this job, I feel like I have to synthesize all different kinds of science more than I could probably stayed in school many more years and not gotten all the training to do this. But you have to take all that in and digest it and distill it, and then create some sort of comment that can be understood by the citizens who read a newspaper piece, or the politicians who you sit down with to talk about something. So it's like, I don't know, I think of myself as like a food processor. Like you just take in like all of these raw ingredients, and you have to blend them up into a nice little package that you can give to someone else. So I remember someone at some point said something about, I'm not an advocate, I'm a scientist or something. And it's like, well, how can you advocate for anything if you don't have the information behind you?
Right.
So I think people see a disassociation between advocacy and science, and I see a complete marriage of the two.
Now, in your work, it's incredibly varied, and you've been in different countries and different people, different cultures. There must be some unexpected, pleasurable things that have happened in all these varied endeavors. Can you think of some rewarding situations that you would not have anticipated in your career that have happened as a result of having this job with Save the Manatee?
I think the opportunity to have an international influence is something. It's something that I would have hoped for, but I really wasn't sure if it would be possible. But in any given day, I might be emailing people in, West Africa, the Caribbean, Central America, all in the same day, trying to do things. And so it's to be able to feel like you're having that broad reach, and that you're not just helping manatees here in Florida, but that you're actually having this sort of global influence and being able to help that's incredibly rewarding.
And you've made friends in all those places too along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so amazing. We do so much by email and whatever, but when push comes to shove and I really want to get to the heart of an issue or to a place, I have to just come. You can only get so far, but then once you do and you spend time with folks.
There are many young people out there that may have gone out swimming with manatees or tromped around in the woods and swamps and the aquatic environment, surfing, fishing, whatever, and have a passion for that. Like you as a youngster, it's gotten in their blood, and they're looking potentially for a way to incorporate that into their career. Mm-hmm. And since you've done that, you're an example of that. What sort of advice or suggestions would you have for a young person that is looking for a path to make that happen for themselves?
I think being persistent, and when you're a kid and you have an idea that you want to do something, it really helps if you have support at home. When someone says, you're 10 years old and you want to be a marine biologist, and if the advice you get is you can't make a living doing that, that's not very helpful. So if there's any parents that are going to watch this, or guardians, I would say definitely support your kid's interest. That's hugely important. But if you can't find that support at home, certainly you can find it at school, from a teacher or something like that. So I think being persistent, and if something's important to you, you find a way to make it happen. Mm-hmm. Certainly in school, doing as best as you can and being diligent. The grades, when it comes time to try to apply to college and things, the grades are very important. And not just, you say, oh, well, I want to be a marine scientist. Why do I need to know about history or language arts? Well, you have to be multidisciplinary. You can't be a scientist and not know how to communicate your ideas and write well and speak effectively. So I think, realizing that it's, again, you kind of need to be a whole package. Mm-hmm. That's important. And once you do, you get old enough, you're in high school maybe, or even starting college, I think finding internship opportunities, finding a way to actually get out there and try out these things. You can't just sit in a classroom and really figure out what your passions are. You have to get out into the real world. And I think not being afraid to start down a path and then decide that it's not for you. When you're really young, you say, I want to save the ocean. Okay. And then you get, a little older, and it's like the older you get, you go to college, you pick a certain college, you pick a certain program, and then from there, you find certain opportunities. Then by the time you get to grad school, all of a sudden it's like, you need to find the one person at the one school who's doing exactly, so it's really this funneling effect of the world is my oyster, to finding just this little niche that you're going to belong to. And so I think that college especially is a time to experiment with those different internships and opportunities. And I had an intern one summer, and she was here in the office, and she liked the policy, but she thought, what about field work? I said, fine, we'll get you out in the field for a day. She went out tracking. It was summertime. It was hot. They never found the manatee they were looking for. She came back the next day and said, I don't ever want to do that again. And I said, finding out what you don't want to do is just as important as finding out what you do want to do. And so I think not feeling that pressure, especially when you're in your late teens, your early 20s, it's okay to change paths, and there's no one right way to get somewhere. Everyone you talk to will have gotten to where they are today by 100 different paths. And so I think not feeling like there's one way to do it, but just, knowing in your heart what your passion is a really important place to start.
There must have been times in your experience along that path for yourself that you got things got tougher than you thought they might be, or you got discouraged in one way or another. Can you give us a little bit of an insight into how you were able to work through those kind of things?
Well, I'll tell you, the first time it happens and you get overwhelmed, it's not pretty. I think any time in life, the first time you come up against something that you're not prepared for, especially if you're like me, you're a very like type A, I have to do everything right, I have to please everybody personality. The first time you feel like you're failing at something is terrifying, and there's probably no one in the world who's going to be as hard on you as you are on yourself. For me, that happened at the end of my undergraduate years. I was doing a thesis, and it was traumatic, but hindsight, I learned so many valuable lessons that when I went on to do my PhD, it was smooth sailing. Like, I knew what to do, what not to do. I knew how to set myself up for success instead of failure, and I knew how to surround myself with advisors that would help me succeed. And so, at the time it was very upsetting, but I remember someone telling me, like, you'll look back on this, it'll be like a blip on the radar, and at the time it's like your whole world is consumed by it. So I think that, always do your best. And my issue at the time was not knowing when to wave the white flag and say, I am in over my head, I do not know what I'm doing,
Right.
I need help.
Right.
And I think that, for me, because I had wanted so much and for so long to be a part of this world and be in this field, it was like, I looked at myself and thought, oh my God, for some reason they let me in. If they find out how stupid I actually am, they'll kick me out again. And so I just struggled and struggled, and that was not smart. And so I know it's something that I'm very conscious of when I have interns or I have students. I try to create an environment where they feel very free to ask questions and just be honest and open, and if they don't get something, to let me know. And so I think that, for students, finding advisors that they really feel that they can trust and confide in, and you need to feel like you have that support system.
Right.
And I think also equally as important is you need to be looking out for yourself and your own health, and not putting this quest to be in this world ahead of just like your own personal sanity. So I think it's just like with everything, it's about finding a balance, but definitely knowing when to say you need help and feeling like you have an avenue to get that help is really important. So for anyone who is going down that path of marine science, manatees, and trying to find the particular niche, I think working in an organization like this or a field like this where you're trying to be the advocate and you're trying to blend the science and the policy, it's not all like a rose petal strewn path. It's definitely challenging. You definitely get frustrated. On a day-to-day basis, kind of you lose sight of progress. It's definitely a lot. You feel like you're just kind of sticking your fingers in the dam. But I think just realizing that there are other people out there who are, working the way you're working. And I think for me also thinking about all of our international friends and the extra issues that they're dealing with on top of whatever caveats we seem to have. At least at the end of the day, I can take a hot shower, like watch a movie or something to relax. And some people who are just like living in the field for months at a time, and they're just surrounded by so much of it all the time. It definitely is. It's challenging, but anytime I think about how hard it is, it's like, well, who else is going to do it? I feel like things have led me here for a reason to do what I'm doing, and so I don't know, that's kind of that and a lot of wine, I guess. Is how you get through it.